Sophie Cunningham is one of the biggest names in the WNBA. And as well as that, she's also one of the best glue guys, role players in the entire league.
All right, this is straight up unbelievable. Caitlin Clark? She did not see this curveball coming. Just when it felt like the Indiana Fever were finally finding their groove, finally syncing as a unit, Sophie Cunningham went and dropped a total bombshell that nobody could have predicted. One statement, and boom. It sent tremors through the Fever locker room and had the entire WNBA buzzing. The timing, the delivery, the impact, everything about it screamed game changer. Whatever you thought you knew about this team before. Yeah, toss that out the window, because this just flipped the whole narrative upside down.
Sounds like the Indiana Fever are not going to keep Sophie Cunningham. It does sound like the Fever are not going to keep her. From her podcast, a lot of the time she'd been mentioning the Fever, and in the most recent podcast, she did not mention the Fever.
You're going to want to sit down for this one. On her most recent podcast, Sophie Cunningham, yes, that same relentless forward known for her grind, toughness, and loyalty, casually hinted she might be suiting up for a different team next season. Fans were stunned. Like, wait, what? One of the Fever's hardest working, most respected players even considering walking away? It didn't make sense. But here's where it gets even more interesting. If that little hint she dropped is real, then this isn't just a Sophie story anymore. It could be the first public sign of something deeper and far more serious brewing inside the Fever organization. A fracture that's been quietly forming beneath all that on-court chemistry.
Cunningham is one of the biggest names in the WNBA. And as well as that, she's also one of the best glue guys, role players in the entire league.
So here's how it all went down. The podcast starts off super casual, just laughs, stories, and good vibes. Then, completely out of the blue, Sophie Cunningham says something that made every Caitlin Clark fan freeze. She says, quote, "The next team I play for, I want a bigger deal so I can finally buy a house and settle down." Then she repeats it, slowly, clearly, like she wanted to make sure people heard her. This wasn't a slip or a joke. It sounded intentional, almost like she already knew her Indiana chapter was closing. You could feel the shift in her tone, calm, confident, maybe even a little detached. That's not how a returning player talks. The other hosts on the podcast were caught off guard, reacting like they just heard something major. Within minutes, fans online were piecing together theories. Was management already planning to move on? Or was Sophie sending a message for leverage? Either way, the energy said one thing. Her heart might already be somewhere else. And the wild part? Sophie used to be the loudest supporter of the Fever. She hyped up Caitlin Clark's leadership, celebrated Aaliyah Boston's growth, and constantly praised the team's chemistry. She even called Indiana home before. But this time, no shout-outs, no optimism, just silence, the kind that says more than words ever could.
It's the 8th pick for a rental of a player that is coming off the best season of her career in her 20s that they don't want to keep. Like, this is the dumbest thing I think I've seen a team.
And here's what makes that moment even more suspicious: the timing. Sophie's coming off one of the best stretches of her career. She's shooting lights out, over 43% from deep, locking down elite scorers on defense, and bringing that emotional energy every team craves. Honestly, she's been the glue holding this young Fever team together. Take her out, and it's not just a loss on the court. It's a crack in the foundation Caitlin Clark's been working so hard to build. She's not just another player, she's part of the culture. But despite all that success, the tone in Sophie's voice said something final, almost like she'd already turned the page before anyone else realized it.
Like, genuinely. They traded 4 years of Sinai Rivers, and by the way, the Fever wouldn't have drafted Sinai Rivers. The Fever would not have drafted Sinai Rivers. The Fever are dumbasses. They would have drafted somebody else. But losing Sophie Cunningham for money reasons is not a smart thing to do.
You could just feel it. Sophie's energy said this chapter's over. This didn't sound like a player chasing a payday. It sounded like someone quietly saying goodbye. Fans knew it too. It was all over social media, the heartbreak, the confusion, the disbelief. Because let's be real, the real mystery here isn't why Sophie might want to leave. It's why the Indiana Fever, in their right mind, would even consider letting her go. A player who brings shooting, defense, leadership, and heart, all in one package, doesn't just grow on trees. And if this really is the beginning of her exit, Indiana might be making one of the biggest mistakes of their rebuild.
Logic for not keeping Sophie Cunningham is if Lexi Hull wants a max. An unpopular opinion, Sophie's better than Lexi. But it's close enough that fair enough Lexi's younger. But I'm like, Lexi's not worth a max either. Like, if you're stuck in a situation where you've got two wings that are not max contract players looking for max contracts, you have to pick one or the other, you're kind of screwed.
To understand why Sophie Cunningham's potential departure stings this bad, you've got to rewind the story a bit, all the way back to how she landed in Indiana. The Fever traded their number 8 overall draft pick to get her. Yeah, their top 8 pick. That move shocked everyone at the time. Analysts were like, wait, what? Because giving up that kind of pick is no small gamble, especially in the WNBA where young talent is deep and affordable. But Indiana's front office swore they knew what they were doing. They said they wanted experience, not potential. They wanted someone proven, a consistent shooter, a seasoned voice, and a teammate who could help Caitlin Clark transition into the pros fast. And honestly, at first, it looked like they nailed it. Sophie brought everything they hoped for and more. Hustle, toughness, leadership. She fit right in, became a fan favorite, and gave the team an identity. Which is exactly why this whole situation hits so hard now. Because the same organization that bet big on her is suddenly acting like she's expendable. The same team that said they were building for now is about to lose the one player who actually delivered right now.
She's willing to take any role. And now she's talking about my next team. This sounds like a podcast of somebody that has just been told by the organization, we are not keeping you. Or, if this is what you want, we're not offering you what you want.
For a good stretch, that trade honestly looked like pure brilliance. Sophie Cunningham gave Indiana everything they hoped for, and then some. She hustled on both ends, played fearless defense, hit big shots when it mattered most, and earned the kind of fan respect you can't fake. She wasn't chasing headlines, she was chasing wins. She made life easier for Caitlin Clark and Aaliyah Boston, becoming that steady force every great team needs. But now, barely a season later, the rumor mill's exploding. Reports are saying the Fever could actually let her walk, for nothing. The same player they spent a first-round pick to get might just vanish without a return. Fans, furious. Comment sections, melting down. Even longtime Fever supporters are calling this a franchise fumble. Analysts are piling on, saying if this move happens, it could go down as one of the biggest front office failures in team history. Because here's the thing, when you give up a valuable draft pick and don't protect the player you got in return, you're not just losing talent, you're torching your credibility. And it gets worse. Indiana's front office looks completely lost. No backup plan, no clear replacement, and zero indication that new contract talks are even happening. It's almost like they didn't expect Sophie to play this well, or they didn't realize how crucial she truly was to their heartbeat. And if that's the case, then this isn't just a bad trade. It's a complete disconnect from the soul of the locker room. Because beneath Sophie's calm goodbye tone, there's a deeper story unraveling. One that exposes something much bigger than money or minutes. It's about how the entire Indiana Fever system under head coach Stephanie White just isn't clicking the way it should. Think about it. With Caitlin Clark's leadership and Aaliyah Boston's dominance, this team should be thriving. But too many players look stuck, like their growth hit a ceiling. Analysts have been warning about this for months. The Fever's development pipeline isn't working. Sophie's tone shift might be the loudest evidence, yet that frustration's been building behind closed doors. Take KK Timpson. Once seen as a rising piece of the rotation, now struggling to find form even overseas. That's not just on the player, that's on the system. When young talent stops developing, veterans get overworked. Sophie lived that reality all season, playing through injuries, taking the hardest defensive matchups, never complaining, always producing. But when it came time for her extension, silence. Caitlin Clark can thrive under pressure. She turns chaos into highlight reels, but even her leadership can't disguise the organizational cracks. Rotations were messy, player roles constantly shifted, and the coaching staff often looked reactive instead of strategic. For someone like Sophie, a pro's pro who values structure, that chaos gets exhausting. So when she talked about wanting a home, it wasn't greed talking. It was burnout, the voice of a player tired of uncertainty. And that's where Indiana's real problem lies. If they can't create stability for a veteran leader, what message does that send to their young core? Underneath all the polite interviews, it's about hierarchy and value. Sophie Cunningham's proven she's an elite two-way player, consistent, unselfish, efficient. Yet the Fever are caught between paying her what she deserves and managing inflated contracts like Natasha Howard's max deal or Lexi Hull's upcoming extension. Cap space is tight, but excuses don't win games. The truth is, Sophie's efficiency won them multiple games. Over 40% from deep, elite perimeter defense, high IQ play, and she never once demanded the spotlight. Yet she's somehow the one left on the edge of the roster. Fans see that and feel betrayed. Why reward inconsistency and overlook the one player doing everything right? Some insiders whisper about politics, that the coaching staff favors players who fall in line over those who might challenge the system. Others say it's just stubborn mismanagement, a front office that can't admit when it bet wrong. But Sophie's comments about a bigger contract weren't about ego. They were about respect. After grinding through heavy minutes and sacrificing so Clark and Boston could shine, she expected loyalty in return. Instead, she's getting silence. And that silence? It's deafening. Because losing Sophie isn't just losing stats, it's losing a heartbeat. She's the calm in chaos, the bridge between fiery stars and steady veterans. That doesn't show up in a box score, but it's the glue that holds teams together. Her influence stretched way beyond the court. When Caitlin Clark entered the league under enormous pressure, Sophie made that transition seamless, screening hard, spacing the floor, defending the toughest matchups and never flinching. She did the dirty work that transforms potential into success. Analysts across the league see her as the blueprint for the modern WNBA wing. Efficient, tough, team first. Losing her for nothing? That's not just a roster mistake, it's a culture collapse. Players like her are rare. Humble, hungry, and irreplaceable. Fans now compare her to veterans like Bridget Carlton or Kayla McBride, steady, respected, essential. Which makes Indiana's hesitation feel even more like betrayal. Because when Sophie said she wanted to buy a house and settle, she wasn't chasing luxury. She was asking for roots, for belonging, for respect. And now, the question everyone's asking, where will she go next? The New York Liberty seem like a dream. Her shooting fits perfectly beside Sabrina Ionescu and Brianna Stewart, but cap space is tight. The Minnesota Lynx? They have the culture, the salary room, and the grit she embodies. Or maybe, just maybe, an expansion team swoops in, a brand new franchise looking for a leader to build around. Sophie could easily become the face of that kind of team, a cornerstone who defines its DNA. Wherever she lands, one thing's certain, she'll make them better. And Indiana will be left wondering how they ever let her slip away. Because Sophie Cunningham's exit wouldn't just change a roster, it would shake a foundation. Her leadership kept the Fever steady through chaos. Without her, the chemistry unravels, the identity fades, and the team risks collapsing into the same rebuild cycle again. Players notice this kind of disrespect. It affects trust, effort, and culture. Fans are already furious, calling out management online, reminding them of the draft pick they gave up for Sophie. This could haunt the franchise for years. Caitlin Clark may be the star, but even stars need stability. Sophie was that stability. And losing her sends one loud, painful message. That loyalty and hard work might not matter here anymore. At its core, this isn't just a Fever issue. It's a WNBA issue. Too many franchises chase headlines instead of chemistry, money instead of loyalty. Players like Sophie, steady, low drama, high impact, are being overlooked while teams chase flash over foundation. You don't miss what happens next. Because trust me, This story is far from over. If that doesn't change soon, the league risks losing its heartbeat, the players who make stars shine and teams thrive. And that's what makes this moment so powerful. Sophie Cunningham's story isn't just about contracts. It's about values. It's about what kind of culture the WNBA wants to build. If you've been following this saga like we have, drop your thoughts in the comments, hit that like button if you think Sophie deserves better, and make sure you're subscribed so